If you had to give two instructions, two guidelines to maximize the survival of an organism, whether that be a single-celled organism like an amoeba or something like that, or whether it be a complex organism like a human being, what two guidelines, what two rules would they be? These guidelines have to maximize both the individual survival of that organism and potentially the genetic survival of that genome, the species to which the organism belongs. My two rules would be, first rule, protect your borders. If you're a single-celled organism like an amoeba and you don't have an effective cell wall, if you have damage to your cell wall, if you have a permeable cell wall, if you allow the wrong things into and out of your cell wall, you don't last very long. If you're a human being, your boundary is the surface of your skin, the external surface of your body. If you don't pay close attention to what happens at the surface of your body, you similarly don't last very long. What goes into and comes out of the body through the surface of the skin is of paramount importance. It's through the surface of the body that toxins enter. It's through the surface of the body that sharp implements enter. It's also through the surface of the body that your vital fluids leak out. It's also at the surface of the body that the good stuff happens. It's at the surface of your body that the good stuff happens. Again, if you're an amoeba, it's at the surface of your cell wall that nutrients enter. It's the cell wall surface that allows you to expel, or the particular properties of the cell wall surface, that allows you to expel contents of your cell self that you don't need inside you anymore. And in human terms, it's at the surface of the body, at the surface of the skin, that all the pleasure takes place. Nutrients are only nutritional if they enter your body, and we have pleasure receptors to judge the quality of nutrients. A pleasurable scent enters the olfactory system through the body. Sexual activity, of course, takes place through the surface of the body. Literal penetrative activity and evacuative activity, let's call it that. So in both amoebas, simple organisms, and in more complex organisms like humans, the first directive I would give, if you want to maximize survival, is to pay close attention to what happens at the boundaries. The second directive I would give, if I was only allowed two, is protect your center. Protect the center. Because in addition to the boundaries, it's at the center that the mission critical stuff happens. In amoebas and many single-celled organisms, the center is the nucleus. It's the part that contains the genetic information that ensures genomic survival, if not individual survival, although quite often individual survival too. Many single-celled organisms can stand having their external surface punctured or damaged, providing their central nucleus retains its integrity. And many single-celled organisms have protection mechanisms that allow them to divert resources from their external surface to the internal nucleus to maximize possibilities of survival in extremely stressful conditions, such as when a pond dries up or when freezes over or climatic changes take place that induce high levels of stress on the organism. And similarly with humans, although we don't have a nucleus as such, we do have a notional centre to our body. In times of stress, such as cold, extreme cold, our bodies have a natural mechanism whereby resources, heat resources in that case, are diverted to the centre at the expense of the periphery. Our fingers and toes would freeze and gangrene would set in and would eventually have to be lost. Our extremities could be lost at the expense of preserving vital life functions that reside close to the core of our being. I think they also, when you talk an intuitive sense of that, if we're ever unfortunate enough to be in a street fight and picked on by a gang of happy slapping hooligans, knocked to the ground, what we will do as a defence mechanism is curl our hands and legs around our central core. We'll curl into a fetal type ball to try to protect the inner part of ourselves. We might protect our face as well, I think that's a special case, but protect our inner self against the onslaught. I think we sort of intuitively know these things as well, actually, these two directives. When we want to indicate who we are, we either say, this is me, what you see is what you get, indicating that the boundary is ourself. Or we say, that's not the real me. At that point, we might make a gesture towards the centre of our bodies, indicating there's some sort of core self that resides deep within that really represents us. I even find that in some academic writing. I think it's Antonio Damasio's writing here, where he just talks about the core self. It's certainly a metaphor, clearly, but it's a metaphor which is drawn from the idea of the centre and the periphery. And the core self, the real self, in that, or the fundamental self, without any sort of cultural baggage and dressing and narrative histories, is figuratively awarded a position central to the overall construction of oneself. And that figuration works to the extent it does, because we have this intuitive sense that in addition to our boundaries we also have a core. So the directive, protect your core, makes intuitive sense in that regard. I think you also find that in certainly some of the drawings of Jung's psychoanalysis, not so much in Freud, but certainly in Jung's you do, where he has a kind of onion skin model of what a self is, with the notional real self, in inverted commas, located at the centre, and then surrounded by layers of ego and archetype and unconscious processes. So just to reiterate, if I had to make two directives which guaranteed my survival, if I had to wind myself up like a clockwork toy and put two mechanisms in there to try to keep me going for as long as possible, the first one would be protect your boundaries, and they'd probably construct a whole series of cultural ideas to reflect that, to do with fashion, to do with face, to do with makeup, to do with the surface of my body. And the second directive would be to protect the core. And again, I'd probably construct a whole series of cultural baggage around that one to reflect that directive, to do with core self, to do with the real me, if I can put it that way, to do with the centre of being.